Good morning and welcome to our Working with Teams Assignments seminar. We're Cloud Design Box. We are global Microsoft training partners and CDB partners for training. And this morning we're going to be taking you through some of the benefits of using assignments in Teams. And our trainer Lloyd is going to take you through some of the key things that you might need to do. So looking at the benefits, for teachers, there's lots of things. Saving teacher time. So the way that you assign resources is very efficient. So you can assign your resources from a centralized place, whether that's in the class team that you're working with, or if you have other teams, subject teams, PLC teams, you can also reach into those and pull out assignments as well in one go. And you can assign those assignments to multiple classes at the same time. You can also set work in advance, which means you can plan your time. You don't have to be there 6:30 in the morning setting that assignment just in time. You can actually plan it several weeks before, put all your assignments in for the next term if you wanted to, with your due dates, with your start dates, and feel confident that everything's planned and under control. Rubrics are a very good way of telling students what the criteria for success are with the assignments that you set them, and allow them to move from being okay to good to excellent. And those rubrics can be reused. So if you make a really good rubric for English essay writing or history essay writing, for example, you can reuse that rubric several times. And once you've done all this marking, and marking is very easy, you can then export those marks out to Excel so that you can do other things with it, maybe move it into your management information system, your school information system, or keep it in your own notebooks, your own mark books. In terms of learners, it really can transform the experience for students while extending the classroom on top of what they normally do. So the big thing is they can work in their own time. If you set an assignment for students, they don't need to do it straight away. They can do it when they've got time, when they've not got other work that they're doing. One of the things that's happening at the moment as well with home learning and people being at home is that students might not have access to a device all the time, because you might have 2 or 3 children in a house and they've only got one device between them to share. So the ability to participate in learning at different times whenever it suits them is going to be really useful. When we push the work out to students, we don't just need to say, here's a blank Word document, here's a blank PowerPoint, fill it in. The teacher can actually start to scaffold that by creating templates. So creating a Word document that has certain tables or side headings in it, certain instructions to help them, and then they fill that document in as a template rather than actually having to start from scratch. And of course, you can do that with your class notebook pages as well, and tables in class notebook pages. They work really well. The ways that students can hand in their work as well, it's not necessarily just filling in Word and PowerPoint and Excel documents, because you can basically assess evidence of learning in lots of different ways. So students could make something beautiful, they could paint something, they could do a collage, they could build a den, a fantastic piece of engineering, take a photo of that, and that photo could be uploaded. They could also take videos of themselves doing things. So you can, you might, for example, if this is a drama lesson, you might get students to record a little monologue, something out of King Lear maybe, or, get them working as dialogues within modern languages. So lots of different ways to assess that learning. Digital inking as well. Not everybody's going to have a device with a pen, but if you do have that available at home, then instead of students writing or typing, they can actually use the digital ink instead to put their mark on that work and to do the work. And the last thing for students here is that it's really easy to get feedback from teachers. So teachers can feedback in 2 ways, really. They can either give an assignment comment that relates to the whole assignment, and the students see that very obviously when they get the work back. But teachers can also open up the actual documents. They can open up the Word documents or the PowerPoints or the class notebook pages that the students have been working on, and the teacher can comment on those as well, and they can ink on them if they're that way inclined as well. So that's just some of the benefits. Lloyd's going to show you a couple of these things today. Throughout the session, you've got a Q&A area within this live meeting. So if you have any questions for us, if you put your questions in there for us for now, and as we see those questions popping up, we'll do our best to answer them either immediately or towards the end of the session. So with that, I'm going to hand you over to Lloyd for him to take you through the training.
Great, so thanks for that, Darren. So welcome to this online webinar, everybody. So I'm just going to go over what we're going to cover in this webinar. So you can see here, we're going straight away. I'm going to start with actually creating a new assignment. So I'm going to go through all the different tools to setting that up. So how you can actually distribute your resources out to your students and some of the other options for the different type of assignments that you can set up. Then I'm going to move on to showing the assignments as a student perspective, so we can actually edit a worksheet today which I'll send out to a test student. And then once that's been handed in, I'll move over to the teacher view, so we can see all the tools that you have to actually mark that assignment, so you can send your feedback, annotate the student's work and send it back to them that way. And then right at the end, we're going to have a look at the grades tool within Microsoft Teams. So that's a really powerful tool which will bring everything together for your assignments for full academic year, so you can compare all of the student work with each assignment that you send out. So let's get straight into the demos. So as you can see now, we're in Microsoft Teams. So if you've been using Teams so far, this session will be great just to go over some of the assignment tools. You might learn a few more things. Or if you're completely new to Microsoft Teams, it's a great session to start with, as we'll be going through all of the tools in assignments. So just to get started, to go into the assignments tool, so to find that area, on the left hand side you can navigate to this assignments tab. So that will then just give you some options to go into one of your specific classes, so you can dive straight into one of them there. But alternatively, if you're already within your class team, this is the way I usually use it. If you're, posting to your students, for example, you do have the assignments tab along the top there as well, so you can quickly access your assignments for this class. So once I've gone to that assignments tab, you can see we have all of the assignments that we've set previously before. So this is where you get a quick overview of your assignments for your class. So you can see the drafts, so the ones that you've maybe started to work on before that you haven't sent out. You get the ones that you have assigned, and then you get a quick overview on the right hand side there as well. So the ones that have been reviewed and turned in. And then just underneath that, I can drop down this graded area, and that will show me all of the ones that I've completed and marked of all that students' work within there. So to start with, I'm going to go to this create button at the bottom, so I can set up a new assignment, then I'll go through the different options that we have. So as soon as I've selected create, we get 3 different options here straight away. So I can either create an assignment from existing. So if I've created any assignments before and I want to reuse those, maybe from a different class, that can be quite useful. We can create a quiz, so that's using Microsoft Forms, where we can create different quizzes and initiate that self-marking feature. And then just above that, we're going to use the normal blank assignment. So this is what I'm going to select for today. So using that new assignment, we can then see we get this form that we can fill out, where we can select the title of the assignment, who we want to actually assign that to, and also mainly the instructions and the resources that we want to send out. So right at the top, I can give my assignment a title. So I could say lesson 1. I'm going to say worksheet task here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually send out a worksheet to the students, which I've got stored in my class team. So then they will get their own copy, enter their work, and then send it back to me. So I can fill in my instructions here. So I can literally type in some words. So I can say, please complete the document below, so the students can see what they need to do. And you can see you have some tools here as well, where you can highlight different sections. So you can add quite a lot of different instructions. It doesn't just have to be some short instructions in there. but I'm happy with that. So then I can go to add resources just underneath there. So this is quite a key area, and there's quite a lot of different options within here for the different type of assignment that you want to set. So at the top, we can select documents from your own personal OneDrive. So if you've already stored a lot of your documents in there, you can quite easily just attach any of your files for the assignment. Underneath that, we've got a really good tool here where you can actually attach pages from your class notebook. So you do get a class notebook with every single class team that you have. So if you want to reuse some of those pages, maybe if you've done some work, on an online lesson that you want to formally mark, you can go into your content library area and attach any of the pages that you have in there. Then underneath that, we have the link area. So this is where you can you just select different links from the internet. So if you're using maybe a different website to do some work on, that'd be perfect to use that, or even just a research task that you want to send some websites to the students that way. You can also create a new file from here as well. And right at the bottom, you can upload documents from your device. But the one I'm going to use for today is I'm going to use this Teams option. So this is a really useful one where I can store all of my documents within this class. Then I can select documents from there to be able to attach that for the assignment. So selecting Teams, I can then see all of the teams that I'm a member of. So I can actually attach documents from other teams as well. But since I'm within this English 11 EN3 class, I can see that within here. I'm going to select that one for today. So within my class, I'm going to use my class materials. So this is an area I can store my files, and the students can't edit any of those documents. So going into my class materials, you can see I've got a couple of documents that I've already pre-uploaded into here. And what I'm going to do is choose the Of Mice and Men folder and select my lesson 1 worksheet. So I can attach that to the assignment. As soon as I've done that, we'll get a quick progress to see once that's attached successfully. And the key thing to note here, by default, when you attach a document to your assignment, it will say students can't edit that file. So that's perfect if it's just a reference document. But for this example, since it's a worksheet, we want the students to have their own copy that they can edit. So the way I can change that as a teacher is to go to the 3 dots on the right hand side there. And once I've selected that, I can select the option for students to edit their own copy. And also what I will do, just so it's quite useful for the students, I can add resources again, and this time I'm going to use the same method of just going to Teams and selecting my class, but I'm also going to add a reference document that they can choose from as well. So just find in my class team there, go to my class materials, Of Mice and Men, and then I'm going to select the characters one that they can refer to there. And I'm going to leave that so students can't edit that file. So underneath there, I'm now going to add a rubric. So a quick overview of what a rubric is. Darren touched on this briefly, but it's basically a way you can add your grading criteria to your assignments and make it really quick and efficient, and to be able to speed up your marking and also add some consistency when using your marking in assignments. So I can simply add rubric here. We then get this box that pops up where we can select different rubrics that we've created before. So I can show you here how to quickly create a new rubric. So select a new rubric there, we get these different options where we can fill this in and paste in the different criterias or categories based on the grading criteria that you want to set. So it's nice and easy to do. I can literally paste into this box, add different criterias, and also edit the categories at the top there. And what is also quite useful, you can select the points and you can evenly distribute the points. So if we've got 4 different criteria here, we can distribute that for 25% for each one. But for this example, I'm going to use one that I've set up previously before, just to add that in. But just to quickly mention as well, you don't have to create a rubric every single time you create an assignment. So you can upload rubrics. So maybe if another teacher's created some that you want to use, or if you've just got a bank of rubrics that you want to be consistent for your subjects there, you can upload them nice and easily by just dragging and dropping the rubric into there. But I'll select one that I've created previously before, so that's attached here, and we can see just an example of that for some of the different criteria that we've added in. So once that's attached, we can then move down a little bit more and select which class we want to assign this to, and some of the options for the date due and scheduling the assignments as well. So I can assign this to multiple classes as well, so that's a really good way, to speed up your process if you do want to send out the same assignment to a few of your classes. So you can simply do that by just selecting the teams that you want to send that out to. But I'm going to leave it on just for English 11 EMY for today. And on the right hand side, I can select the students that I want to send this out to. So by default, it will send the assignment to all students in the class. But if we do want to change that, we can simply select all students, and then we can select individual students here, which can be perfect if you do want to send an assignment out. It's maybe for an advanced group, for example. But just selecting a few here, and once I'm happy with that, I can then move on to these bottom options where I can select a due date and also the time due for the assignment. So I could set this for next week, for example, and select a time due for maybe 3 o'clock for when my lesson is with our students. Then underneath that, just note you can edit the assignment timeline. So this is really useful if you want to schedule assignments in the future, so you can actually set when the students will receive that assignment. So that could be useful if you may be creating a few assignments at the same time and you want to schedule and keep organized that way. So you can simply just select the box and then specify when you want that assignment to be sent out in the future. And just to let you know, you can also select a close date on the assignment as well for the students when they want to turn that working by. So also at the bottom, this will post a notification into that general channel. So that's just on the left hand side. So that would be an area that all the students can access. So as soon as you've posted the assignment, all of the students will be able to see the assignment has been sent out. So I'm happy with that now, so I can assign that on the top right, so then the students will receive that assignment. So as soon as that's been sent out, the student will receive a notification that will come through, so they can see the assignment and see the instructions and documents that we've sent out to them. So if I just go back to my assignments tab there, what's quite useful is we can see that assignment that I've just sent out. So the one right at the bottom there, it's a lesson 1 worksheet task. So switching to my student view, we can now see that we've got a notification at the top there. So that's a way that student can keep up to date with the assignments that you sent out. They'll see their activity feed, and we can see that lesson 1 worksheet task that I've just sent out. So from the student perspective, they can see the title, the instructions that we just added in, and also the work that they need to complete. So note here that the document that the students could not edit is underneath the reference materials, so that's nice and clear for them to refer to. And also the work that they need to complete is that worksheet task there. But also students do have the option to add extra work. So they don't have to just complete that document that you've sent out. So maybe, for example, they've taken a picture of the work that they want to send back to you, or any other evidence for that assignment. They can always attach documents from the OneDrive, or just upload files from the device if they've taken a picture of the work in that way. And on the right hand side, we can see the points that we set and the rubric. So this is where a student can actually access this and refer to all of the different criteria that we added in for the assignment. So now to actually edit this document and then send it back to the teacher, so I can show you the options that the student gets with editing that file. So I'm going to go to that My Work area, select on that worksheet, and then straight away that will open up Microsoft Word in the browser within Teams. So this is really useful for the students. They don't have to, leave Teams. So if they're just working on this on a tablet device, they don't have to download anything or any of the documents. They can keep editing within Teams that way. So I can literally see the document here, go to Edit Document at the top, and then just edit this in the browser. So then I can add my answers to the worksheet. So I can select in this area here that we set up as a teacher for this document, and then simply type in my answers. So I'm just going to type student work example. So we can see the student typing it in there. And right at the top, you can see as soon as I'm typing, that will change from saving to saved. So all of the work will automatically save for the student, so they don't have to worry about losing any of the work at all. It will always be stored within Teams. So once they're happy with their assignment and they've completed that work, I can then close that down and turn it in back to the teacher. But just before we do that, I'm going to show you something which is quite useful from the teacher's perspective as well. So just going back to that teacher's view, if I was to just refresh the page a second, and I will go back into that assignment that I've sent out today. So I can go into my lesson 1 worksheet task, and what you'll see is I've now gone into the overview of this assignment, and underneath Susan, so that was a student that I just used and viewed that document, we can now see that the status has changed to viewed. So even though the student hasn't actually turned that work back in yet, as a teacher we can see that they've opened that file. And what's useful as well, you can select that and see the latest version of that document, so we can see that work that I've just actually added in there. But to finish this off and update this, I'm going to turn this back in as a student, so then we can go into the marking area. So we can see that nice animation as soon as that's been turned in, and we've got a date there for when the student has actually turned that in. So now going back to my assignments, as a teacher, I'll just give this quick refresh as well, and then we'll be able to see that the turned in status is updated for the teacher. So you'll note that as well on the right hand side, so that's now changed. So 1 out of 4 students have turned that in for that quick overview. And going back onto the assignment here, we can now see that status has changed to turned in, and that has now notified us to let us know we can come in and do our marking for the assignment. So selecting on Susan, I can just select turned in there, and I can now add my annotations and add my feedback for the student's work. So we get a couple of options here of how we can add feedback and send it to the student. So I can actually edit the document. So if I did want to add some annotations, maybe for example they needed to expand on a section that they haven't fully completed yet, I could do that and edit their actual file anywhere I would like. So you can select wherever you would want to on the document, add this to a different font, and then just type in some comments there on the student's work. And also a really good feature within the browser version of Microsoft Word, if you're not aware of this, is the dictate option. So this is really useful if you're using maybe an iPad or a tablet device and you don't want to use the on-screen keyboard. So just to speed up your marking, you can use that dictate option to actually speak over the document, and it will transform what you're to say into text onto page. So I'll quickly try this out. So I can literally select where I would like to on the assignment. Then as soon as I've selected dictate, I can then speak over the document and add my comments that way. Expand on the last paragraph. You can see there that's now added some quick annotations using that dictate option. And on the right hand side, you'll see the feedback window here. So that's where you can add some official feedback and some top level feedback to the student there. So I could say if the document was complete or not, and add my feedback into that area. And then just above that, we have the rubric. So this is where we attached this earlier on when we created the assignment. And this is where it can be really easy to just simply select your different points from your rubric and from your different criteria. So for creativity, I can select my different criteria there, skip to the next one along, and select my different feedback. And then as soon as I've completed each one, that will calculate the score out of 100, can select done at the top, and then return that back to the student that way. So once that's returned, the student will get a notification coming through, which I'll show you in a moment or so. But just to let you know, to continue with your marking, you can use the options at the top there to nice and easily switch to the next student and carry on with the same method which I did if that's editing the actual document and adding some feedback and using the rubric on the right hand side there. So once we're happy with the marking as a teacher, I can close that down and you can see automatically that's changed and updated my marking for this assignment. So you can see we've got a quick overview of the ones that we still have to mark, and then this has now been added and populated so we can see the one that I've just marked for Susan's work there. So you can refer back to that feedback that we added on the right hand side and the score that was calculated from that rubric. So just to go over some of the other tools from the teacher's side of things as well. So you can see the student view, so you don't have to have the actual student account to see their perspective. You can still select that student option, so you can see how that would be sent out to the student. And also you can edit this assignment at any point. So maybe you do need to add some further instructions, you can always go back to that and add that in. And quite a nice one that I like to use is this add category. So that's where, especially if you've been using assignments a lot and you want to organize it that way, you can quickly add a different topic onto your category at the top to make it easier to find. So once that's updated, if I go back to my assignments, you can see there where it says upcoming. I can categorize that and change it to my different categories so I can quickly find my assignments to do with of mice and men there. So now moving back to that student view so we can see how that would look for the student. So you can see here they've now got a notification coming through that the assignment has been returned, and they would then be able to see the feedback that was sent and see the annotations that we sent back as well through the Microsoft Word document. So now to move on to the grades. So imagine, you know, we've been using the assignments for a lot within this class. We need some type of tool to be able to have an overview and look at all of the students' work that way. So along the top there, we can see this grades tab that you will have for every single class team. So this is where you have that high-level overview for all of your different assignments that you will send out for all of your students within your class. So you can see on the left-hand side there, the most recent one that we've sent out was that lesson 1 worksheet task, and we've got the score which has been automatically populated once that was marked. So you don't have to worry about, you know, editing this, and it will be automatically sent in as soon as you've sent that out to the students or the student has actually returned that assignment. So you can see we've got quite a lot of assignments for this class, so I can scroll along, see all of the different assignments along the top, and also see all of the students' work if that's been returned and the points that they've sent. And one useful feature is you can actually hover over one of the students' work, use those 3 dots, and that will give you a direct link straight to that student's work there. So if you did need to go back to any of their work that they've done maybe months ago, you've got that direct link to be able to access the files. So I'm just going to close that down, and just to mention as well something that Darren touched upon, how you can actually export all of this information. So maybe at the end of the year you wanted to export all of your assignments, you can use that button right at the top right there, which will create an Excel document with all of the information, so for all of your students, all of your assignments, and even the comments that you added in to each assignment as well, just by selecting that, and that will then download a spreadsheet which then you can access and store that somewhere else maybe outside of Teams so other people can access it. So going back to the presentation here, so just to open that up, one thing to quickly go over and to let you know about is the apps that you can download to use Microsoft Teams and some of the other apps within Office 365. So you can download OneDrive and Teams to access those files and access any of the conversations within your team, and SharePoint as well to access any of your shared resources. And then if you're using this on a tablet device or mobile phone, for example, you can use those usual apps that you've probably used before, such as Word, PowerPoint, Excel and OneNote to download all of those apps that way. So I'm going to pass you over back to Darren now, and we'll answer any of your questions in the Q&A. But I hope you found that useful, and that's been a good introduction and overview into assignments in today's webinar.
Awesome, thanks Lloyd. Some great tricks and tips there for using assignments, and I think we can see that Microsoft have really made some progress with this in recent times to make it work better for education and for teachers and students. So we've got a couple of Q&A questions coming in, and just as other people get a chance to put their questions in as well, just to take a moment to talk about us again. We're Cloud Design Box, we're global training partners, and we're CPD certified. And we spend most of our time helping schools and colleges really get to grips and get started with Teams, class Teams, and SharePoint Online. So should we take a look at some of these questions coming in, Lloyd? We've had a few.
Yeah.
By the way, when you send your questions in, if you want to remain anonymous, just say so at the in your question, and just say, you know, don't read the name out. We don't have to show that, but we can just read out your question. So I think we might have answered a couple of these already. There were questions about being able to set up multiple rubrics for one task. There aren't multiple rubrics as such, but of course, and I think you showed this slide, you can create different lines of the rubric, if you like, different competencies. So if you are marking something for English, for example, if it's an essay, you can break that down into the different objectives that are going to add up to a good grade. And then you can put a different weighting on each one of those. So let's say, for example, that your work is in 2 parts, but part 2 is actually much more important. It carries more marks, more weighting than part 1. Then you could change the weighting for those second elements and make them more important in that way. So you don't need multiple rubrics. One good rubric is enough. So we had questions about class notebook, which is a beautiful thing. People might be used to using class notebooks from before, because it didn't always sit inside Teams. It used to be its own kind of app, and people could create their own class notebooks and they get stored in people's OneDrives. But it's really a much more integrated experience now inside Teams. So rather than kind of starting in OneNote and trying to make it all work and trying to connect it up to the team somehow, the best thing to do is go to your team, use the assignments which Lloyd showed you. I know we looked at Word documents today, but you can equally do that with the class notebook page, and assign the page from there, and that will be distributed to all your students. But I think it's a much easier way of marking. The thing that Lloyd showed you with the Word document, that you can jump between the work for different students for the same assignment, it's exactly the same with the class notebook. So use the teams, use the assignments, and make Teams the center of what you do rather than the different apps that feed into it. After the closing time, can the students still complete and view the assignment? So there are some advanced options that we can do to allow people to hand in the work late. Is that something we could show, Lloyd?
Yep, so I'll just go back to the demo page. So going back to assignments and creating that up so we can see those options again. So when we went to that edit tool, that's where we can select that close date that I was talking about there. So we can select a date for, so the students can't turn in the work after that. I'd probably recommend just, leaving that off so then the students can still hand in the work that way.
Yeah, it's as we were saying earlier, these are difficult times, and although it's important to set expectations for students that they have to get their work done on time, because we all have to get our work done on time, sometimes that might be difficult. They might not have access to devices as often as they would need to, so sometimes it might be appropriate to give a little bit of leeway and frankly, if not many of the students in the class have managed to complete it by that date, to actually change the date and say, yeah, you guys need a bit more time. So it's all about the date, Lloyd. Is that kind of how you'd?
Yeah. So it's all about the date that you add in there, and you can see if you don't select the box there for the close date, the late turn-ins are allowed, and if you was to select that, the students can't turn the work in past the date that you used to set up there.
Awesome. Another question that comes up that's related to that is, if I have students who are in my class, but a new student arrives, even this late in the term, you can still get transfers from other classes. What happens with assignments that have previously been set for that class throughout the year? Will the student get all those assignments, or will they not get them?
Yep, so you can edit that there where it'll say don't assign to students added to this class in the future. So you do have the option to edit that option where you can assign that to all the students added to the class in the future that way. So
the default is not to give it to new students, but you can change that per assignment if you need to. Exactly. That makes sense, because it means because if there's like 100 assignments that you missed, it's not reasonable to ask a student to catch up on all of those, but there might be 2 or 3 key assignments, things that maybe you're using for formal assessment that you definitely need them to do, and then you pick those ones and you say, yeah, you've got to catch up with these now. One of the questions, do you get notifications when a student has submitted the work? So, do you get an email, or do you get beep, beep, beep? The answer is no, because it would just drive you mad. It would be too much information. The idea behind this is that it's not something that you basically stay away from and only go to it when your email tells you to have a look. As a teacher, this is just like your classroom. It's an extension of your classroom. So you would be in here all the time. This is your class. This is you and your 27, 28, 29, 30 kids, in that class. So I would say you're going to be in that space every day anyway, talking to those students, setting assignments, seeing how they're doing with the assignments, just as you would in a normal classroom if you were walking around and keeping in touch with those students and making sure they were on track and on task. And I think it's exactly the same thing. I think you'll spend a lot of time in here. Also, with the mobile devices, all the stuff that we've been showing you in terms of seeing assignments, marking assignments, that's all available through the app as well. So it's quite easy for a teacher to keep in touch through this and to rely less on email, because people don't really read emails. Is there a way for a student to see the assignment due dates in a calendar? So not yet, but that is coming soon. That's one of the user voice questions, and a lot of people have voted it up. So that will be something that comes, is that students will get kind of a calendar view so that they'll be able to plan their time out. Returning student work, if you want the students to resubmit some work with corrections. So basically you've set some work, might be a Word document that you've pushed out, the students have returned that, and there are some issues with it. They might have got some facts wrong, they might have got some dates in the wrong order, maybe they need to look at their punctuation and apostrophes, because that does matter, and spelling and grammar and things like that. So the teacher could put a comment against the whole assignment, as Lloyd showed earlier, and make that assignment available for the student to do again, and then the student has another go and they make the changes and they send it back. It can actually be a very iterative process. It's not about doing the work once and getting it wrong or right. It's about doing the work once, and then the teacher can steer you to make improvements, and you have the opportunity to make those improvements and pass it back maybe 2 or 3 times. If it's, if it's a substantial piece of project work, then that might be a good way to do it. And then each time the student just submits it back to the teacher, and the teacher can see some more work's been done, and keep going in that way. Is there a way to know an assignment has been handed in without having to look through each assignment? Well, you can do that through the gradebook, which Lloyd showed you. So really, as a teacher, you're either working in the individual class, and you might open up a specific assignment to see what's going on, or you can use the gradebook, which is kind of your overview, your quick view, if you like, of what's happening. And as you can see, lesson 2 creative writing, you can see that some work has been returned there for those specific students. So that's where I would be spending a lot of my time as the due date for the work is coming up or is passed, to see how the students are doing with it. Also, it's handy because it gives you an overview of how individual students are doing with each assignment. If you're looking at Robert Arkwrightson there, and you can see that actually he's not handed in much work, to be fair. So you probably, sooner than this, you probably need to have a conversation with Robert and say, how's it going? Why aren't you doing the work? Are there problems? Can we help you? That kind of thing. Can you change the grade after resubmitting? Yes, you can change the grade whenever you like. So when grading, what's the difference between returned, a green tick, and a mark awarded? Lloyd, do you want to have a look at this one? I think it's just about how much you want to do. You don't have to give an assignment a mark. It might be enough that the student's done the work, and you can say, yeah, I'm happy they've submitted, they've done the work, I'll tick it off and say it's done, but it doesn't necessarily have to be part of formal assessment. And perhaps the big change when you return the work is that it then locks that work so the student can't keep doing it.
Yeah, I'm just going back to the rubrics as well. So what we mentioned earlier, so one of those questions. So as a teacher, if I was to select on one of my assignments here, I go to the student view, and we can access that rubric that we attached earlier. So if you did want to, share these out once you've created them, you can see at the bottom right there, that's where you can actually download that rubric. So then you can upload that again. So when I showed you how you can upload a rubric and then drag it into it, that would be the file that you would be using. So if you did want to share this out with another teacher, you could download that rubric and use the file and to send it to another colleague that way.
So these rubrics are great. So for me, from a student point of view, it just tells them what they need to do to succeed. Because I remember being a student myself, and I've had other students who just never quite seem to understand what success looks like. Why do I only ever get a C or a D? Why don't I ever kind of get the slightly better grades? And it might be just because they don't understand, and not everybody will implicitly understand what success looks like and feels like. They might need to be given that structure to say, yeah, if you want to move from this level up to this level, then, you know, for example, my subject, modern languages, you'd have to say things like, oh, I need to be using 3 tenses, not just 2 tenses. And that would just push you over into the next boundary. And every subject has these things that they can hook onto. So I think it's just fair to give the students a fair chance that they can succeed. And of course, there's 2 kinds of assessment you might be doing. There's your statutory assessments where everybody is kind of measured against the same yardstick, which is, it's a nice thing, it's a fair thing, and using those rubrics allows you to do that. But also, of course, you can do the comparative judgment thing, where you basically just click between the same piece of work for different students, and you kind of organize them and say, well, yeah, this one's better than this one and that one's better than that one. Much less structured, much less formal, but equally valuable. And I think maybe the answer is a mix of the 2. Sometimes you're going to say there are some specific criteria you need to achieve to succeed, and other times you say, well, just do the work that you can do, and you kind of differentiate it by outcome, expecting that certain students are going to get different results to others. Can teacher Y use a pre-made assignment from teacher Z? So no, you can share rubrics, and if you've centralized your resources, you're kind of 99% of the way there anyway, because if you're putting your resources for a department, whether that's English or chemistry or French, whatever, if you're putting those in a central team, which all those teachers can access, sometimes called a PLC, or we call them subject teams, then any of those teachers can reach into those teams and they can pull those resources out. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with a teacher putting all their resources inside their own classes, each class. So you put it in the files tab, you might put it in the class materials like Lloyd did for his training today. That's absolutely fine. But if you really want to benefit from working together as a department, so that, you know, you're each doing slightly less work as teachers, then you share those resources in a central place, and that's where you pick them from. So it's not a case of saying, oh, I'm just going to take this whole assignment with, you know, everything, the title, the description, the rubric, the mark scheme, and copy that from a colleague, because you'll probably want to differentiate that anyway for your classes. You're going to want to assign slightly different assignments to different students. You might change the due date so that some students do the same work, but they take a bit longer to do it, and why not? But the idea of having those centralized resources will really help out as well. Could you show that, Lloyd? I know we've got an English team in there. Obviously, you have to have this set up, but just to show the difference between resources inside the current class and resources in a central place. We cover this afternoon, actually, in our SharePoint session for creating central areas.
Yeah, sure. So we've added another tab at the top here for all of the resources, so all of the English resources across that full subject. So every single teacher that teaches English will be able to have contribute access to here, so they can, you know, upload documents, manage their files. So you've got that centralized bank that you can select from when you're creating your assignments that way. So that's where you can store all of your documents that way for the subjects. When compared to the Files tab and the class materials, that's just attached to that specific class. So only those teachers in that class could access those resources. When the resources tab at the top there for the subject is more for the full subject, so every teacher can access those files.
Great, and you can use those in the assignments as well. When you create a new assignment, you can just pick and choose that other team. It might be called, you know, chemistry PLC or chemistry subject or chemistry staff or whatever you've called it, but it's a central place, not for the students, just for the teachers of that subject, that they can pick up those resources. You might give students access to it as well, but you've got issues then about who can access what. Thinking ahead to when students may be completing assignments in class as well as at home, would it be easy to scan in their responses from classwork so all assessments could be in one place? That's interesting, because of course in the past this was all about homework. You know, you'd set some work and the students would do it at home, or they'd do it, you know, after school. IT or library sessions, whereas now pretty much all work is happening at home, but that might change as people start to come back. And people might start to use this in the classroom, and you're going to end up with a blended learning going on that's a mixture of this and the kind of traditional stuff that you're doing. You know, if you're an art teacher and you're literally working with paint or clay or sculpture or that kind of stuff, of course that's not a digital medium, so you have to find some way of representing that. You can literally take a picture. So the student, and I think Lloyd showed this a little bit earlier, you can use your OneDrive app on your phone and take a picture. That picture then goes into your OneDrive, and then the student can literally attach that piece of work from their OneDrive as evidence within that assignment.
Yeah, so just an example of this, we've got an assignment that we've created before, so just take a photo of your work. So you're using that assignment tool to be able to monitor and, you know, get back all of the students' work that way. So then that's automatically put into the grade book as well. So we can see here Susan has turned this photo in before. So if I select this is where we're using one of the pages from the class notebook, and you can see here it's just surfaced that page, and the student has actually taken a photo of just a piece of paper with some questions and answers, and then added that to the page here. So as a teacher, you can come in and you can, you know, add some comments if that's just using your keyboard, or you could even, you know, insert some stickers to this and make it look a bit more engaging that way. So you have quite a couple of different options of how you can add some feedback. But some of the main benefits is just, you know, you've got some evidence of that. You know, as soon as a photo has been taken, the student can always refer back to that, so they've got that digital copy, and you're still adding in all the information into assignments so you can access it for the full year.
Yeah. So it's still very much about the student doing that. They'd be taking those photos and attaching it. It wouldn't really be a place that the teacher would do that. But of course, you know, if you're using something like Class Notebook, every student has their own section in the Class Notebook which the teacher can get into. So if the teacher did want to use that as a repository for some of these non-digital pieces of work, they could take photos of them and they could then paste them on behalf of the students into those areas. If it were me, I'd get the students to do the work rather than, as a teacher, spending the time, you know, copying and pasting into student areas. But it is possible. Is there a function for the child to respond to your teacher feedback? So the teacher would add in some feedback in there. There's not really, is there, directly within this? Because I think it could go on quite a lot. I mean, children can always talk to the teachers within the team, so they can use the chat function of the team and say, you know, hi sir, I saw your comment about the work. Yes, I'm going to get that done for you, but just so you know, I've had some problems, you know, because my cat has passed away, and you know, I'm upset about it, and I can't do it until Tuesday. Or I've got a problem because I don't have a dictionary at home. What can I do? And then the teacher says, oh, well, you can download this app.
Yeah, I suppose the options with that, you know, you don't get more of a conversation within that feedback. That's just an area where the teacher can submit some of the feedback too. But you could use the comments within the actual document itself. So if you was adding comments there, you can start maybe a conversation so the students can see your comments on different parts of the document. So they could you know, add comments there from the student as well. So that's probably one option of doing it. But in terms of what you can do at the moment in Teams, you just get an area where the teacher can report feedback using an option for the student to actually reply to that as well. So you'd have to do that within the document.
Great. Can students collaborate on a project style assignment like you can do in Word with collaboration? So in other words, assign a piece of work to a group of students and the students work on it together. Not directly. There's been a lot of interest in that question, so I know it's something Microsoft are looking at. If you wanted to work in a collaborative way, I would do that slightly differently. I would not do that in assignments initially, we won't go into too much detail on this today, but you can see that on the left-hand side there, we've got a couple of extra channels. We've created a private channel called Gifted, so that's for those specific gifted students that you might want to extend in a different way. And you can create groups, which in this case we've created as private. So Group A, Group B, Group C, yellow table, red table, green table, you know, depending how you want to do it. If it's English, you do, you know, Shakespeare, Byron, Shelley. Those would be your group names. They can be either private or not private, if you don't mind people seeing the work in each one. And what you could do there is you could pre-create those groups maybe at the start of term, and then a student knows they're either in red group or green group or orange group or whatever. And that's where they go and do the work. So the assignment that you set to each student might simply be, go off and do this work, but do it collaboratively. So you give them that instruction to go into that area that you've pre-created, and they create a document in there, and they co-author and they collaborate on that document. And because it's a channel, there's a posts area in there, so they can have discussions and arguments about how the work should be done. You can all get a bit Lord of the Flies, you know. And then when that's done, when they're all satisfied that piece of work is complete, they can actually all take a copy of that document, and they can each upload that into their assignment. So essentially, you know, if there's 5 people in the group, you end up assigning the same assignment. It's literally going to be the same document because they all worked on it equally in theory, and they all own that document. So there's not a formal way to do it through the assignments process at the moment, but I think just by mixing in some of those private channels and the assignments, I think a teacher could pull that together. If you set through OneNote, will the feedback show on the class notebook page? I see Tony's replying to that one. So don't assign through class notebook. Don't use OneNote. The class notebook adding that's at the top, it's been great for a long time, but honestly, stop using that. Use the assignments, because you just get much better integration between the grade book and everything we've shown you. And that's just a better way of doing it. So the official feedback box won't show the feedback, but the annotations will. Okay, so yeah, if you write on the class notebook page, then of course you're actually writing inside the document, so students will see that. But if you want to give general feedback about that assignment, do that through Teams, do it through assignments. So just a general check-in question here. The pattern is pupils submit work, I feedback, give them a mark, tell them what to improve, they make the changes, hand it in and update it. Then the teacher can remark it and give it a new mark, a new grade. Yes, that's exactly right. That would work well. Is there a limit on the number of Microsoft Forms assignments a teacher can set? I'm not aware that there is. Just keep trying and tell us when you get there.
There's a question there as a MFL teacher about using, and see Tony's answered that, using a class notebook page in the assignment. And there's a tool to record your voice as a quick audio clip. So if you're doing any speaking exercises, so I'll just share that quickly within the class notebook and where that tool is. But it'd be the same method today of how we used create a new assignment, but you just select a page from your class notebook that you'd set up. So within your content library, you could have a page within there that you'd send out to the students so they get their own copy. So if I just go to a random page here, I could select anywhere I want within the page, and then going to insert, you can see there's an audio option there. And again, that works similar to that dictate option that I showed today, where it'll record what you say, but it'll just insert an audio clip onto the page, so you could use that to do any speaking tasks.
Can we show the immersive reader really quickly, Lloyd, just while we're there, because it'd be a shame not to. So while we're talking about MFL or ESL, English speakers of a second language as well, or special needs, this is just a great tool, and it works in different languages as well. So if you happen to be doing a piece of work in French or Spanish or Chinese, you can use this exact same support that Lloyd's going to show you here in English.
Yep, so this can work within, class notebook, Microsoft Word, in assignments as well. When a student can see the assignment, you can use this immersive reader tool. So if in the class notebook, if you go to the view at the top, you can change the way this page is displayed using that immersive reader just underneath view there. So that will completely transform the view of the page and any of the content within there. So you can see the background's changed there, and on the right hand side the student can change their own preferences. So if they do want to increase that text size, they can do that to however they would like, increase the spacing so they can turn that on or off, change the font, and then you can even change the background to improve your reading as well that way. And then looking at the grammar options, we've got a few of these turned on at the moment, so it will save you preferences as well. So if a student always likes that green background and to highlight the nouns, for example, that will always save every time they use and launch that immersive read tool. So again, you can just simply select the different adverbs using those toggles, and that will highlight the different words within the text. And then, as Darren mentioned, with the reading preferences, you can translate the word by word for the full document. So you've got lots of supported different languages within here. So if I was to translate this into French, for example, you can use that by word for the full document, and you get the original and the translated version there.
Très bien, like, très bien. So the good thing about this is it does really work with all these languages. And it's not just translating each word bit by bit, which would be a bit rubbish. It really understands the context of the whole sentence that's been written. So there's some AI behind it. And these really are good translations for the most part. So it's super good. Thanks for that, Lloyd. There was a question about comparative judgment, because we talked about that briefly. Because you want to judge standardized tasks in English. Is this something teams might look into as a future development? There's nothing specific for that. In terms of if you're used to things like no more marking, you haven't quite got that kind of thing that you can slide people up and down, and the work is anonymous. You haven't got that. But what you can do is within your class, you can choose to switch between the work for each student very quickly without leaving the context of teams. And that would allow you as a teacher to do some kind of comparative judgment, although you'd kind of have to remember the order that you wanted to put people in and then give them marks accordingly. So you'd find yourself shuffling the marks up and down. I don't know if that would be useful. But sometimes that's a much better way of doing things than the standardized assessment through the rubrics. Are there any ready-made rubrics? I don't think so, but they're so easy. They're so easy to make. And, I think probably what we'll do, actually, I'm just thinking about this. If any of our customers have made rubrics for their departments or their subjects, and they want to kind of share them centrally, we'll find some way of doing that. We'll make a team or something for people to put those in. But they're so easy to make, you don't need to worry about that. And keep them simple as well. Don't try and create, 16 pages of rubrics, because the kids won't read it. Just, 2 or 3 different sections, punctuation, grammar, content, and that's pretty much it. Can students submit video footage? Yeah. So small videos. Don't create, 16 terabyte full-size videos in Adobe Premiere or whatever, because uploading that obviously into any kind of cloud system is going to take a while. I would think more kind of TikTok. Would this video be short enough to work on TikTok? Does it very quickly demonstrate the skills that I'm trying to evidence? 1-minute videos, with relatively low resolution, and then just upload that from your OneDrive. Take the video on your phone. That will save to your OneDrive anyway, depending on how you have your phone set up. And then you can assign that work from your OneDrive into the assignments if you're a student, or there are other file areas that students can drop into as well in a less formal way, where they can, share what they've done. Can we use resources from centralized department teams instead of individual class site teams? Yeah, so we looked at that. Obviously, you have to set that up. So in the same way as you need to create your class teams, somebody would have to create up those departmental staff teams. That happens to be something that's in our product, but obviously you can do it yourself and manage the membership of it as well. Just going back to the MFL thing while we're thinking about it, and we won't show this because it will really mess things up for the demo, but you can change Teams into another language, and the same for SharePoint. So literally, you could go into settings for Teams and get your students to go into settings for Teams and say, aujourd'hui, on va faire ça en français, and you switch it to French, and everything's in French in Teams. It's amazing, and everything can be in German, and everything can be in Welsh or Chinese. And it's a brilliant thing, and SharePoint could do the same thing, although it takes a little while for the SharePoint to kick in. So you could do so much in MFL with this. It's great for that. There's a question I saw, how are channels monitored for safeguarding if students can collaborate and communicate online? Well, of course they can come in and they can talk to each other and they can say things to each other. Mainly this is your class as a teacher. You've got one teacher and 30 odd students. You're going to have maybe 10 or 11 classes as a teacher, depending on the timetable. So the teacher should be keeping an eye on this in exactly the same way as, if a student comes into their lesson, you make sure they're not being mean to each other. What the students need to know is, provided you've set up the policies correctly on Teams within your organization, students need to know that anything they say, they can't take it back. So you can't say something and then delete that message. And you can't edit something you've said previously and pretend it was something less nasty than what you said. So everything they say will have their name against it and it can't be deleted. There are some policies you need to set up to make sure that happens, but that's not a difficult thing. So I think we're coming to the end. Thanks for your questions, everybody. Thanks for turning up today and participating. Just to let you know that we are here if you need some support. Obviously, some of the folks here today are existing customers, just checking in with us, and we've got other people that are just looking to get Office 365 for education working for them. There are free resources that you can get from our website. You don't need to buy anything. clouddesignbox.co.uk/resources. There'll be videos there taking you through a lot of the things that Lloyd's shown you today, and a lot more things that we've kind of talked about but we haven't done in detail today. Spend some time, have a look at those videos. And there's a YouTube channel as well, so YouTube, Cloud Design Box UK, or just go to YouTube and search for Cloud Design Box. Or frankly, we've done so many videos, if you just go to Google and type Cloud Design Box, and then a word of your choice. Honestly, this is what I do. Assignments, great. Remote lessons, great. I just type it in and something will come up. So please feel free to use those resources. And if you do want to talk to us, obviously about using our product, please get in touch. Or if you just want some help or some advice, we're still happy to talk to you. Thanks very much today.